Okay, here is our 4-minute quest for striving for better midos, der Heretz, what I like to call honorable mention. And simple rules are, it's more than saying please and thank you. It means not leaving a soiled tissue on your chair, on the table, or on the floor and expecting someone else to clean up after you. It means not cutting a line, even if you think that your time is more important than someone else's time. It means cell phone decorum. Now, cell phone sounds very old, so we can call it smartphone decorum. I find it inappropriate for people who people want to speak to me and they're swiping on their phone when they're talking to me. To me, this is akin to me saying, I wish to speak to you and I'm reading a novel as you're talking to me. A lot of rules regarding the cell phone. People talk so loudly on their phone in a public place. I've heard people shout intimate things over the phone. I've been at funerals where a phone goes off. Now, I'm aware of the fact that sometimes you forget to turn off your phone. But what I will never get is how do people take the call? I was once at a funeral on Friday morning here in Jerusalem. And that Friday night, I told my kids at the funeral, a phone went off. I don't know if you ever noticed, it's always the jumpiest niggin. It's always the jumpy melodies that of the phone rings, especially at a funeral like the Munsters or the Adams family. In any event, so I told my kids at the Shabbat meal that I was at a funeral, the phone went off, and everybody said, it must have been a doctor. I said, I don't think this 15-year-old girl is a doctor. Sometimes just having a phone is inappropriate. You're crowded in places, you're in a crowded place, in a crowded restaurant, a crowded bus. These are not the appropriate times to be speaking, certainly to be speaking loudly and disturbing other people. Another area is that being careful about people's time. If I take your money, I steal your money, I can always replace it. Time is irreplaceable. So if you make people wait for you, that's a criminal act. There's a person in my family who is always chronically late, and I kibitz her that on her matzeva, on her tombstone, they will write, here lies the late. So if someone doesn't understand not to be late and not to waste people's time, so we have to be aware of the fact that time is not ours to squander other people's time. And if you make many people wait for you, a whole office, a whole school, a whole classroom, then the crime is compounded by how many people you've made wait. Many great rabbis, I'll give one example, Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, if someone would give him a ride, he would be extraordinarily grateful because a ride, time is life, and life is time, and time is Torah. If you gave him a ride, that means you saved him time. For this, he was so grateful. And this will sound strange, but 65 years ago, it was unusual for a religious person to drive in Israel. 70 years ago, it was almost unheard of for a religious person to own a car. And the person who told me the story was the first car in Shari Chesed, Shlomo Zalman's neighborhood, to own a car. And Rabbi Auerbach was going to be Masada Kedushin out of town in Petach Tikva, and this fellow offered to give him a ride. He said, thank you so much. He said, what time should I pick up the Rosh Yeshiva? He said, well, the chuppah is called for 6 o'clock. Pick me up at 4:30. So Shlomo Zalman, as was the case, was outside waiting with a sefer, and he's waiting and waiting and waiting. 4:30, 4:45 o'clock, 5:10, 5:25. The driver's Moses said, where were you? He said, I couldn't bear the thought. If I would have come in time, the Rosh Yeshiva would have arrived at the wedding as the busboys were setting up the table, as photographers setting the equipment out of the case. Said Rabbi Auerbach, don't worry about me. I have plenty of things to do with my time. But we make up a time, we must keep a time. And I don't care if you never give me a time again. I don't care if you never give me a ride again. But if we make up a time, we must keep a time. The poor groom, he has to think about, is the rabbi coming? Is coming on time? So we'll leave it here that just be careful about people's time. They say that one of the rules of public speaking is tell them what you told them, then tell them what you're going to tell them, then tell them what you told them. I don't think it's so important to review. It is important to be a Mentschen, to have their Heretz, be careful of other people's feelings and their courtesy.